The wine glass froze halfway to my lips. Across the dinner table, my wife of 9 years had turned the color of ash. Her college roommate, Megan, was still laughing. Completely oblivious to the grenade she just dropped onto our white tablecloth. "Oh, my God, remember when you were dating that professor?" Ethan hinted it expelled. Megan was on her 4th glass of Pinot, her cheeks flushed, her guard somewhere on the floor. "What was his name?" "Dr. Ashford. You were absolutely obsessed with him." I watched Tori's face cycle through 3 expressions in less than a second. Shock, terror, and then a carefully constructed mass aslisal. "That was a long time ago," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Ancient history." My brain, the same brain that had spent 18 years calculating load-bearing structures and stress tolerances, was already doing different math. Tori and I met in September of our freshman year at a party in the Commons. We started dating by October. There was no before. There was barely time for her to learn where her classes were. "What, professor?" I asked. My voice came out calm, measured. The same tone I use when a client tells me their contractor made unauthorized changes to my blueprints. "It was before you, honey." "It doesn't matter." Tori reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her palm was damp. Megan's eyes had gone wide. She'd finally caught up to the conversation she'd derailed. "Oh, I mean, it was nothing serious, I'm sure. Just a silly more wine." Tori was already standing, grabbing the bottle with fingers that weren't quite steady. "Megan, you have to tell Ethan about that disaster of a date you went on last month. The guy who showed up in a cape." I let her redirect the conversation. I smiled at appropriate moments. I asked follow-up questions about Cape Guy, but the whole time I was cataloging. Tori's trembling hand as she refilled her glass. The way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes, the slight flush creeping up her neck that had nothing to do with the wine. I've seen my wife negotiate $1 million pharmaceutical contracts without so much as a flicker of nervousness. I've watched her face down hostile board members and come out smiling. This was fear. The next morning, Tori was aggressively normal. She ate pancakes, something she only does when she's trying to smooth something over. She kissed my cheek twice. She suggested we take Lily to the zoo next weekend. "About last night," she said, scraping batter into a pan. "That professor thing. I probably should have mentioned it before, but it really was nothing. A crush. I took one of his classes, thought he was attractive, and made moon eyes at him for a semester. That's it." "Before we started dating," I said, not a question. "Yes, before." She turned to face me, spatula in hand, and her smile was so warm, so sincere, that I almost believed her. "You know you're the only one who ever mattered." I nodded, kissed her back when she leaned in, told her the pancakes smelled amazing. My father was a private investigator for 32 years. I spent my summers as a teenager organizing his case files, learning to read between the lines of surveillance reports and phone records. He had a saying that stuck with me. "Never ask a question you don't already know the answer to." I had questions. Now I needed answers. Tori took Megan shopping that afternoon. "Girls' Day," she announced, her voice just a touch too bright. "You don't mind, do you?" "Of course not." I waved them off from the driveway, waiting until her BMW disappeared around the corner before walking back in sight. Our home office is technically shared, but Tori keeps her personal items in the credenza by the window. Bottom drawer. I've never had a reason to look in there before. The drawer slid open easily. Tax documents, old birthday cards, a folder of recipes she'd clipped from magazines and never made, and underneath a towel, a cardboard box labeled college in her neat handwriting. I sat cross-legged on the floor and lifted the lid. Program from her graduation ceremony, a sorority paddle, photos of people I vaguely recognized from her stories. And then, tucked into the corner like a dirty secret, a strip of photo booth pictures. Hannah frames, Tori and an older man, grey at the temples, distinguished looking. In the first frame, they were smiling. In the second, he was whispering something in her ear. In the third, she was laughing. In the fourth, they were kissing. Not a peck, not a friendly goodbye, a real kiss. The kind that makes the rest of the world disappear. I turned the strip over. Written in Tori's handwriting. March 2011 G. March 2011. Our sophomore year. We'd been together for 18 months by then. We'd already sent, I love you. I'd already started thinking about engagement rings. The affair wasn't before me. It was during. I put everything back, exactly where I'd found it, took photos first, of course, the strip, the date, the box's position in the drawer. Then I went to the kitchen, poured myself a bourbon, and sat in the silence of my house while my whole world quietly rearranged itself. Here's the thing about structural engineering. You learn very quickly that when a foundation is compromised, the entire structure is at risk. You don't panic. You don't start tearing things down. You assess, you document, you determine the extent of the damage before you make any decisions. Tori came home 3 hours later, shopping bags on her arms, laughing about something Megan had said. I smiled. I helped her with the bags. I told her Lily had called from my parents' house and wanted to know if we could get a puppy. She's been asking about that for months, Tori said, rolling her eyes affectionately. What did you tell her? That we discuss it. Good answer. She kissed my cheek on her way to the bedroom, completely unaware that the foundation of our marriage had just developed a crack I could drive a truck through. Monday morning, I started research. Danton. Graham Ashford wasn't hard to find. LinkedIn showed him as a strategic communications consultant based in Chicago with an impressive list of corporate clients. The university's archived faculty pages confirmed he'd been an associate professor of business communications from 2006 to 2014, when he'd left to pursue opportunities in the private sector. I know how to read between the lines. Pursuing opportunities after 8 years at a tenure position meant one of two things: a scandal that forced him out or a scandal he was smart enough to see coming. I dug deeper. His wife's name was Caroline Ney Whitmore, as in the Whitmore Foundation, which had a building named after them on campus. 2 children, both in private schools. A house in Wetco about $4 million. Ashford had landed on his feet. Soft, wealthy feet. I pulled up Tori's academic records, easy enough to request through the Alumni Association under the guise of updating my records. Her transcript showed 3 classes with Ashford, 1 her freshman year, 1 her sophomore year, and an independent study her junior year. And independent study, 1-on-1 sessions, no other students in the room. I remember junior year. Tori had been stressed, distant, school stuff. She'd always said when I asked, I'd given her space, I'd been supportive, I'd trusted her. The bourbon didn't taste as good as it had 3 days ago. On Wednesday, I texted Megan. Hey, Tori seemed upset about the professor thing at dinner. I don't want to make it weird, but can you tell me what actually happened just so I don't put my foot in it again? My phone rang 20 minutes later. Ethan, I'm so sorry. Megan's voice was tight with guilt. I had no idea she hadn't told you. I assumed. I mean, you've been married for years. I thought surely. Hadn't told me what, Megan? Silence, then a long exhale. I could hear her pacing on the other end, her heels clicking against what sounded like hardwood. Look, I felt terrible since that dinner. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the look on your face when I mentioned his name and Tori's face, and I never meant to cause problems. I know you didn't. Just tell me the truth. Another pause. I heard the clink of ice in a glass. It wasn't just a crush, Ethan. They were together, like really together for almost 2 years. The world went very still. 2 years. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought you knew. I thought her voice cracked when she said it was before you. I thought maybe she meant emotionally or God. I don't know what I thought. But it wasn't before you. It was at the same time. How do you know? Because I covered for her multiple times. She'd tell you she was studying with me, and she'd really be with him. She used to sneak out to see him after you fell asleep. She had a whole secret phone just for him. I saw it once. It was one of those cheap prepaid things. She kept it in her sock drawer. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Did anyone else know? A few people. Our friend group at the time, Julie, Marcus, that whole crew. We all thought you knew, or at least that you suspected. We assumed you guys had some kind of arrangement, I guess. Looking back, that was stupid. But Tori always acted like everything was fine and you seemed happy and we were all 20 years old and didn't want to get involved in drama. When did it end? The affair. Another long silence. Megan, I don't know if it did, Ethan. That's the thing. She was still talking to him at our reunion 3 years ago. I saw her step outside to take a call, and when I asked her about it later, she got really defensive, said it was nothing. Used those exact words. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate you telling me. Ethan, what are you going to? I don't know yet, but I appreciate the honesty. Please don't tell her I told you. She'll never speak to me again. Tori and I have bigger problems to discuss than your phone call. I hung up before she could say anything else. Then I sat in my car in the parking garage of my office building and stared at nothing for a very long time. 2 years. Our entire foundation had been built on a lie, and according to Megan, the lie might never have ended. I didn't confront Tori. What would be the point? She'd deny it, minimize it, turn it around on me somehow. I'd watched her do it to colleagues. I'd watched her do it to her own family. My wife was a master of deflection, and I refused to give her the opportunity to practice on me. Instead, I watched. I waited, I gathered. Our phone plan is under my name, has been for years. Easier for the family discount we'd always set. I logged into the account and downloaded detailed records going back 24 months. There it was. A number I didn't recognize appearing every 2 or 3 weeks. Conversations lasting 30 to 60 minutes always when I was traveling for work. I ran the number through a reverse lookup service. Prepaid Benefund purchased in Chicago, Ashford City. My hands were steady as I saved the records. My breathing was normal. My heart rate was probably elevated, but not by much and good in a crisis. I called Raymond Cross that night from my car, parked outside a grocery store where no one would overhear. Raymond had worked with my father for 15 years before retiring. He was pushing 70 now, but his mind was still a steel trap, and he still had contacts in places I couldn't reach. Retired FBI, retired police, forensic accountants, digital specialists. Raymond knew everyone who mattered and a few who didn't. Ethan Cole, he said when he answered, last time I saw you. You were 18 years old and convinced you were going to be an architect. Close enough. Structural engineer. Your father would be proud. Pass. This isn't a social call. No, sir. I need some help. the discreet kind. I told him what I knew: the affair in college, the phone records, the Chicago connection, the photo booth strip I'd found, Megan's revelations. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making sounds that indicated he was taking notes. When I finished, there was a long silence. Your father used to say that the worst cases weren't the mysteries, they were the confirmations. When clients came to him already knowing the answer, just needing someone to prove it. Is that what this is? You tell me in your gut. What do you think happened? I think my wife has been in for our entire relationship. I think she never stopped seeing him. I think I'm the stable, respectable husband who provided cover while she did whatever she wanted. Then you already know. You're just looking for proof. Can you help me find it? He sighed. What do you want to know, Ethan? The full scope or just enough to confirm what you're already thinking? I didn't hesitate. Full scope. Everything you can find. I need to know how deep this goes before I make any decisions. That might mean finding things you don't want to find. I know. Your father said the same thing to a client once. The man said he wanted the truth no matter what. 2 weeks later, when your father showed him pictures of his wife with another woman, he broke down crying and begged your father to tell him it was fake. Raymond paused. Truth is heavy. Make sure you're ready to carry it. Einrate. Then I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. I'll need everything you have. The phone records, the photo, your wife's schedule for the past few years. If you can get it, her travel history, anything that might help me connect dots. I'll get it to you tomorrow. Good. Give me 2 weeks. And Ethan, don't do anything stupid in the meantime. Don't confront her. Don't change your behavior. Let her think everything's normal. I won't. Your father would be proud of how you're handling this. He always said you had a good head on your shoulders. Thanks, Raymond. I was past stupid. I was in the cold, calculated place my father used to talk about. The place where emotion becomes fuel instead of fire. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in patience. I played the part of devoted husband. I took Tori to dinner. I helped Lily with her homework. I laughed at appropriate moments and kissed my wife goodnight and pretended I didn't notice when she slipped downstairs to check her email at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. I'd installed a baby monitor app on my phone years ago when Lily was an infant. The base unit was still in the guest room, which shared a wall with the kitchen. That Thursday night, I sat in our bedroom with my earbuds in and listened. I miss you too. Tori's voice was low, intimate, nothing like the tone she used with me. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's completely oblivious. He's never had any idea. Something cold and sharp settled in my chest. I know. 3 more weeks and we'll have the whole weekend. I've already told him it's a pharma conference in Dallas. A laugh soft and secret. You know. I'd rather be with you. You know that. I listened for another 20 minutes. I didn't record it. Not yet. I just needed to hear it for myself to kill any last hope The affair had never ended. 15 years and she'd never stopped. Raymond's report arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by courier in a plain envelope with no return address. I read it in my car during lunch, parked behind a warehouse where no one from my office would see me. The first few pages were timeline vacant sections. Raymond had cross-referenced hotel bookings, flight manifests, and credit card statements to build a picture of the past 3 years. The position was almost clinical. 6 meetings confirmed. Hotels in Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, 1 in New York, which had coincided with a pharma industry summit Tori claimed she'd attended. I'd even dropped her off at the airport for that one. Kissed her goodbye. The dates were listed in the neat columns. Next to each one, Raymond had noted what I'd been doing at the time. Business trip to Denver, conference in Portland, home with daughter, wife claimed client Tinnen. She'd had a system. She'd studied my calendar and planned her escapes around my absences. This wasn't passion or impulse. It was logistics. One meeting was 3 weeks after Lily was born. I read that line 3 times. Then I closed my eyes and breathed through the rage until it banked down into something manageable. 3 weeks postpartum. I remembered that time vividly. Lily had been colicky, screaming through the nights. I'd been changing diapers and doing midnight feedings and learning to function on the 2 hours of sleep. I'd thought I was the luckiest man in the world. I'd thought we were building something together. While I was warming bottles at 300 a.m., my wife had been planning a rendezvous with her lover. The rage wanted out. It wanted me to throw the report across the parking lot, to drive straight home and confront her, to put my fist through a wall. But I'd made promises to myself about how I was going to handle this, and I wasn't going to let Graham Ashford turn me into someone I didn't recognize. I kept reading. There was more. Raymond had dug into Ashford's past and found a pattern. Another affair with a student back in 2008, quietly hushed up by the university. The student's name had been redacted, but the details were clear enough. She'd been 22, a graduate student in his department. The relationship had lasted 8 months before she'd gotten pregnant. The pregnancy had been resolved. The student had transferred to another school. The Whitmore family had donated a new library wing that year. Coincidence? In my experience, there are no coincidences. And then, at the end of the report, a note in Raymond's handwriting. Thought you might want to verify something enclosed. At-home DNA testing kit. Instructions inside. Results take 7 to 10 days. My hands shook as I looked at my daughter's picture on my phone. Brown eyes like mine, my mother's nose, my chin. The same stubborn set to her jaw when she didn't want to go to bed. She was mine. She had to be mine. But doubt is a poison, and the only antidote is certainty. The DNA test was simple enough. A cheek swab from Lily while she was sleeping. She didn't even wake up. A swab from myself. 2 vials sealed and sent to a lab in another state. One that promised discretion along with accuracy. The DNA results took 8 days. I barely slept for any of them. Every time I looked at Lily, I found myself searching for signs. Her laugh. Was that my laugh? Her temper. She got frustrated the same way I did, didn't she? The way she cocked her head when she was thinking. I did that too. Didn't I? I hated myself for looking. She was my daughter. Biology was a technicality. Even if the worst was true, I was still her father. I had changed her diapers and taught her to ride a bike and sat up with her when she had nightmares. Graham Ashford was nothing but a name she'd ever heard. But I needed to know. When the email came, I was in the bathroom at work, hiding in a stall like a teenager sneaking cigarettes. My thumb hovered over the attachment for a full 30 seconds before I forced myself to open it. Probability of paternity, 9997%. Lily was I. I sat on the toilet lid and cried for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Relief mostly, but also a new bitter understanding. Tori hadn't stayed with me because she loved me. She'd stayed because I was the safe choice, the stable income, the respectable husband, the father of her child, the cover story that let her live her double life without consequences. I wasn't the love of her life. I was her alibi. By the fourth week, I had everything I needed: photo booth strip, phone records, Raymond's report, Megan's testimony. She'd agreed to let me record a follow-up call, knowing full well what I intended to use it for. The overheard phone conversation, now properly documented with timestamps and transcription. I met with Diana Reyes on a Friday afternoon. Her office was all glass and chrome, intimidatingly modern, with a view of the city that cost more than my first car. The walls were lined with degrees, awards, and photographs of Diana with various local politicians. This was a woman who won. "Mr. Cole," she said, shaking my hand with a whip that lent essence. "My assistant tells me you have a situation that requires discretion. That's one way to put it. Tell me what we're dealing with." I told him. Half the photo booth strip, the phone records, Raymond's comprehensive report, the overheard phone call, the 15 years of deception. She took notes with an expression, occasionally asking for clarification, never showing a hint of surprise or judgment. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with what might have been respect. "You've been thorough. My father was a PI. Old habits. Good habits." She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. "Let me explain your situation. Our state has at-fault divorce provisions, which means adultery, proven adultery, which you clearly have, affects the outcome. This isn't just about ending a marriage. It's about leverage. What kind of leverage? Asset division. For starters, a judge is going to look at your wife's documented 15-year affair and think, this woman systematically deceived her husband while using marital resources to fund her betrayal. Those hotel rooms weren't free. Those plane tickets went free. She was spending your money to cheat on you. I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. Then there's spousal support." Diana continued. "Under normal circumstances, given your respective incomes, she might be entitled to some form of maintenance. But courts don't look kindly on awarding support to the party who destroyed the marriage through sustained deception. You'll likely pay nothing. And custody, that's where it gets interesting. A pattern of deception, 15 years of lying about something this fundamental, speaks to character. It speaks to judgment. A judge will want to know if she could lie this effectively about an affair. What else might she lie about? Is this a person who can be trusted to prioritize a child's well-being over her own interests? I don't want to use Lily as a weapon." Diana nodded approvingly. "Good, because judges hate that. What I'm suggesting is different. We present the facts. We let the facts speak for themselves. And we ask for primary custody not because your wife is a bad mother, but because you are demonstrably the more stable, trustworthy parent. Let it pound her. Your wife, she can fight it, but she'll lose. And her attorney, assuming they're any good, will tell her that. My guess is she'll push for settlement to avoid having all of this become public record. And if I don't want to settle," Diana Reyes smiled. It was not a worn smile. "Then we go to trial and every dirty little detail comes out. Your choice, Mr. Cole. But in my experience, people who've been lying for 15 years tend to prefer keeping those lies quiet. I want her to know the scope of what I have. I want her to understand exactly how exposed she is. That can be arranged. Some of my most effective negotiations happen before papers are even filed. A preview of the evidence, a clear explanation of the likely outcomes. It tends to focus the mind. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. This was moving from emotion to strategy, from chaos to plan. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Quietly restructured our finances, moving my bonus into a separate account. perfectly legal before separation. Diana assured me documented all marital assets. Discovered in the process that Tori had been siphoning small amounts into a personal account for years, not enough to be illegal, but enough to confirm she'd been planning her own exit strategy. Everything ready now. I just needed the moment. I called Megan on a Sente. I need you to come visit again next weekend. Ethan, I'm confronting her and I need a witness. Silence. Then I'll be there. The night before Megan arrived, I arranged for Lily to stay with my parents. Daddy needs to talk to Mommy about some grown-up stuff, I told her. You'll have fun with Krana and Campo. Will you bring me a present? She asked, her brown eyes, my mother's eyes, trusting and innocent. I will, I promise. I watched her get in my mother's car, waving from the driveway until they disappeared. Then I went inside and started preparing dinner. Tori came home in a good mood. The house is so quiet, she said, dropping her bag on the counter. We should take advantage of it. I thought we'd have a nice dinner in just the two of us. That sounds perfect. She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs to change. I'll wear that dress you like. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. That's weird, Tori said, descending the stairs in the blue dress she wore on our anniversary. Were you expecting someone? Actually, yes. I opened the door. Megan, what a surprise. Megan played her part well. I know. I should have called, but I was in the area and I thought, is this a bad time? Of course not, I said. Come in. We were just about to have dinner. I watched Tori's smile tighten almost imperceptibly. Megan, this is unexpected. I hope it's okay. Megan clutched her purse like a shield. I can leave if don't be silly. The more the merrier. Tori's voice was bright, but her eyes had gone wary. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what. We sat down to dinner. I'd made lamb chops, Tori's favorite. The irony wasn't lost on me. I poured wine for the women and sparkling water for myself. Not drinking, Tori asked, raising an eyebrow. Not tonight. I want a clear head. That's cryptic. She laughed. But I could see the faint line forming between her brows. Something felt off to her. Good. We made small talk. Megan's job at the tech startup. The weather, that restaurant downtown that had just gotten a James Beard nomination. I watched Tori relax by degrees, convincing herself that everything was normal. So, how long are you in town? Tori asked Megan, reaching for the wine. Just the weekend. Flying out Sunday afternoon. We should do brunch tomorrow. That place on 5th. You remember Ethan? We went there for Mother's Day. I remember the conversation continued. I asked questions at appropriate intervals. I laughed when something was funny. I played the part of the devoted husband, the good host in suspected nothing. And then, as I cleared the plates, I said it. I want to talk about Dr. Ashford. The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Tori's phone clattered against her plate. Megan's face went pale. Ethan, we've been over this. No, we haven't. I sat back down, folding my hands on the table like I was conducting a business meeting. You told me it was a crush before we started dating, a silly thing that meant nothing. That's what it was. Tori's voice had that slightly tin-bright quality, the one she used when she was selling something. I don't understand why you're still fixated on this. Because I found something interesting. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the photo strip, slid it across the table toward her. March 2011. Gee, does that look like a Hessian? The color drained from Tori's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her hand reached for the photo, then stopped, hovering in midair like she was afraid to touch it. Where did you your box in the office? The one you thought I'd never look in. I kept my voice calm, steady. 18 months into our relationship, and you were kissing another man in a photo booth. A real kiss. The kind of kiss that makes the rest of the world disappear. I paused. Does that sound like before me, Ethan? I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explaining things. You've had 15 years of practice. I looked at Megan. Why don't you tell her what you told me? Megan's hands were shaking visibly now. Her wine glass trembled as she set it down. Me. Tori's voice was sharp. What is he talking about? Megan met Tori's eyes with visible effort. I told him the truth about the 2 years, about the secret phone, about how it was happening the whole time you two were together. She swallowed hard, about how I covered for you multiple times. Tori turned on her with something close to hatred. You had no right. She had every right. She thought I already knew, because what kind of wife lies to her husband for 15 years? 15. Tori's laugh was high, desperate, cracking at the edges. That's ridiculous. We had a thing in college. It's been over for has it? I pulled out the phone records, spread them across the table like evidence at a trial. Every 2 weeks, calls lasting 30 minutes to an hour, always when I'm traveling for work. I watched her face as understanding dawned. A burner phone purchased in Chicago. Should I tell you who lives in Chicago? Ethan, those calls are just, it's nothing. We're friends. He was a mentor to me during a difficult time. A mentor. I let the word hang in the air. Is that what you call it? You're making this into something it isn't. Am I? I placed Raymond's report next to the phone records. I had an investigator look into this. Turns out you've met with Dr. Ashford at least 6 times in the past 3 years. Hotels in Chicago, hotels in NY, one very expensive suite at the Peninsula. I flipped to a specific page, including one meeting 3 weeks after our daughter was born. Tori was crying now. Real tears, not performance tears. I knew the difference after 9 years. Mascara running down her cheeks, her beautiful face crumpling. It wasn't in tongue. The word came out sharp and she flinched. Don't tell me it didn't mean anything. I heard you. Heard me. Thursday night 3 weeks ago? The date he is still on my phone. You were in the kitchen talking to him. I pulled out my phone, queued up the recording I'd made, pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. He doesn't suspect anything. He's completely oblivious. He's never had any idea. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. I have more about how you can't wait to see him, about how you'd rather be with him than me, about the Dallas conference that's actually a weekend at his condo. I set the phone down. Do you want to hear all of it, or have you heard enough? She had nothing left. No more cards to play. She sat there shaking, tears streaming, while 15 years of lies came crashing down around her. Megan hadn't moved. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. I'm filing for divorce on Monday, I said. My attorney has copies of everything. You can fight it and watch all of this become public awet, enter it into evidence, available to anyone who cares to look. Or you can accept the terms I'm offering, which are more generous than you deserve. For Lily's sake, please. Her voice was broken now, all pretense gone. We can work through this. I'll end it. I'll never speak to him again. Counseling, whatever you want. Please. Just her phone rang. She stared at it like it was a snake. I could see the screen from where I sat. Graham, you should probably answer that, I said. She did, her hand trembling so badly she could barely hold the phone, and I watched her face as her second world collapsed. Caroline knows. She breathed into the phone. What do you mean Caroline knows? Graham, what? She listened, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. But how did she? You don't know. What are we going to? She listened for another 30 seconds. Then she lowered the phone to the table and stared at it like she didn't know what it was. She's filing, she said. Her voice was hollow, scraped empty. She's taking the children. She's taking everything. He says his career is over. Funny how that works. I said actions have consequences. Apparently, that's news to both of you. The next 6 weeks were a carefully choreographed demolition. Tori moved out to her sister's house because she had no one else to go. I kept the house. I had primary custody of Lily until the proceedings were finalized. Though I made sure Tori had regular visitation, whatever she'd done to me, she was still Lily's mother. Diana Rise was worth every penny of her considerable fee. She presented our evidence methodically, professionally and devastatingly. Tori's attorney, a competent woman who clearly knew a losing battle when she saw one, advised her to settle. With at fault provisions and documentation this comprehensive, the judge's decisions were practically predetermined. I kept the house. No spousal support to Tori, 60-40 custody in my favor. Asset deletion mutilated 15 years of deception. She could have fought harder, Diana told me after the final hearing. She chose not to. Make of that what you will. I thought about it, decided that Tori, for all her faults, had at least had the decency to recognize when she was beaten. Ashford's collapse happened faster than I expected. Caroline Whitmore. Ashford did two things halfway. Within a week of receiving my anonymous letter, detailed, factual, no threats or demands. She had her own team of attorneys working on what I later heard was one of the most thorough divorce filings in Cook County history. She took the children. She took the house. And then, because she was a Whitmore and had the resources to do it, she made some phone calls. The 2008 affair resurfaced. I didn't ask Raymond whether he'd helped that along, and he didn't volunteer the information. But suddenly, there were whispered conversations at the university, official inquiries, a pattern that couldn't be ignored. Ashford's consulting business collapsed like a house of cards. His clients were academics, executives, people who valued reputation above almost everything else. They couldn't afford to be associated with a man whose name was becoming synonymous with predatory professor. 3 months after my dinner party, Graham Ashford was alone, jobless, living in a studio apartment while his wife, ex-wife, raised their children in the house his sugar daddy money had paid for. Sometimes the universe has a sense of justice after all. He called me once. It was late after midnight, and I'd fallen asleep on the couch watching a documentary about bridges. My phone buzzed against my chest, and I answered without checking the number. "You think you're so clever?" His voice was slurred, probably drank. "You think you won something? Who is this? You know who this is?" A wet laugh. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed everything I built." I sat up, suddenly very awake. "Dr. Ashford, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Don't patronize me. I know what you did. The letters, the investigators. You ruined me." "No," I said calmly. "You spent 15 years sleeping with my wife. I just made sure everyone else knew about it. She came to me. She wanted it. Everything that happened was a choice you made. Actions have consequences. You're experiencing those consequences now. If you don't like them, you probably should have thought about that before you started an affair with a 20-year-old student. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. And if he calls again, I'll file a harassment complaint. I'm recording this, by the way. Have a good night." I hung up, saved the voicemail, and went to bed. Lily, it just ain't better than I'd expected. Kids are resilient. That's what everyone tells you, and it turns out to be true. She missed her mother. Of course she did, but she also adapted to the new rhythm of our lives with an ease that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Daddy, why does money live somewhere else now? I'd thought about this question for weeks, practiced answers in the mirror. None of them had felt right. Because sometimes grown-ups need to live in different places, I said finally. It doesn't mean we love you any less. It just means things are different now. Are you sad? I pulled her onto my lap, son. But I'm also happy because I have you. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart. I never spoke badly about Tori in front of her. That was the one promise I made to myself throughout all of this. Whatever Tori had done to me, Lily deserved to have a relationship with her mother that wasn't poisoned by my anger. The cycle of lies stopped with me. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a message through LinkedIn. Mr. Cole, my name is Carolyn Ashford. I believe we have something in common. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I wasn't sure what I expected from this meeting. Closure, commiseration, an ambush. We met at a cafe downtown, neutral territory, somewhere neither of us had history. She was smaller than I'd expected, delicate-looking, with grey eyes that missed nothing. She was dressed impeccably, the kind of quiet elegance that whispered old money rather than screaming it. Mr. Cole. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, business-like. Thank you for meeting me, Mrs. Ashford. Or is it Miss Whitmore now? A thin smile, perceptive. Yes, I've gone back to my family name. Ashford isn't something I want to carry anymore. We ordered coffee. She took hers black. I noticed her hands were steady, her posture perfect. Whatever emotional turmoil she was feeling, she kept it well hidden. Thank you for the letter, she said once the pleasantries were out of the way. I suspected for years. I just needed someone to confirm it. I thought you deserved to know. How you used the information was your choice. Why anonymous? You clearly weren't afraid of confrontation. You faced your wife directly, because it wasn't about me wanting credit, and because I thought you might shoot the messenger. Metaphorically speaking, I considered it. She sipped her coffee. When I first read your letter, I was furious at you, at Graham, at myself for being blind for so long. I threw it in the fireplace. But you didn't burn it. I didn't burn it. Something stopped me. I think deep down I already knew. I just needed permission to act. Did you? She studied me over the rim of her coffee cup. Or did you want someone else to burn him down so you didn't have to do it yourself? I considered lying, decided against it. This woman had denied to enough. Both. I admitted I wanted him destroyed, and I didn't trust myself to do it cleanly. You had resources. I didn't have connections, influence, and frankly a better claim to moral outrage. Your husband had broken vows to you. Your children had been betrayed. My grievance was almost secondary. She nodded slowly. Honesty, that's her thing. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime. So have I. She set down her cup. I want to tell you something, not because you asked, but because I should know. Graham kept a journal. A journal. Detailed, obsessive. He wrote about his affairs like other men write about golf scores, names, dates, what he called hunkus notes. Her lip curled with disgust. Your wife appears frequently. He was quite descriptive. I felt my jaw tighten but kept my voice level. I don't need the details. I'm not going to give you details, but there's something you should know. She wasn't just complicit. She knew about the 2008 affair, the the student before her. Graham wrote about telling her about how she laughed and said it made him more attractive. She knew he was a predator. She didn't care. The words landed like punches. I'd known Tori was capable of deception. I hadn't realized she was capable of that level of moral indifference. What happened to the journal? I gave it to my attorneys. It's part of the divorce record now, sealed by court order. But if Graham ever tries to resurrect his reputation, ever tries to claim he was the victim of a witch hunt. She smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. Well, there are ways to unseal records. We talked for another hour. Two people destroyed by the same man and woman, comparing notes on the wreckage. She told me about the 2008 affair in more detail. A graduate student who'd been quietly paid off. Her career quietly destroyed when she tried to go public. The Whitmore family had donated a library wing that year. Hush money dressed up as philanthropy. He's done this 3 times that I know of. Caroline said Victoria, the 2008 girl, and there was someone else earlier before I married him. A Cullicue's wife. Graham has a pattern. He targets vulnerable women, makes them feel special, uses them until he's bored, and discards them. Tori wasn't vulnerable. She was 19 years old in dating me. Everyone's vulnerable to something. Maybe for her it was the thrill of the forbidden, the intellectual older man versus the nice boy her own age. I'm not excusing her. God knows I'm not excusing her. But Graham knew exactly which buttons to push. He always does. Did. Caroline's smile was grim. Past tense feels good, doesn't it? Better than I expected. Ashford tried one more thing before he gave up. He hired a PR consultant, some crisis management guy who specialized in reputation rehabilitation. Started a whisper campaign claiming I'd set him up and manufactured headlines. Contacted my employer with concerns about my character. I'd anticipated this. Diana had too. Defamation is a serious offense, she told him that shark smile of hers. And everything we have is documented. If he wants to go public, we can go public. I don't think he'll like what happens next. I sent a cease and desist letter, included a summary of the evidence I had on file, offered him one chance to back down. He took it. The whispers stopped. His PR consultant moved on to other clients, but he couldn't leave it alone entirely. 3 weeks later, at a professional conference I was attending, he showed up. It was a structural engineering symposium, not exactly his field, but the kind of cross-industry event where consultants sometimes appeared looking for clients. I was standing near the refreshment table talking to a colleague named Harris about low distribution in high-rise construction when I felt Sonnen's presence at my shoulder. The hair on the back of my neck stood up before I even turned around. Some part of me had been waiting for this moment. Graham Ashford looked smaller than his photos. The distinguished grey was just grey now, limp and unwashed. The confidence that must have charmed Tori and Caroline, and who knows how many others had been replaced by something desperate and dangerous. His suit was expensive but wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "You," he said. "I want to talk to you." Harris excused himself hastily, mumbling something about needing to find the bathroom. "Coward." Though I couldn't. Ashford's energy was unstable, barely contained rage shimmering beneath a thin veneer of civility. "Then talk." "Not here." He glanced around at the other attendees who were already starting to notice us. "Outside 5 minutes. Whatever you have to say, you can." His jaw tightened. "Fine. You want an audience. You'll have one." He stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "It was 11 in the morning. You destroyed me. Do you understand that? Everything I worked for, my career, my family, my reputation, you took it all away. I didn't take anything. You lost it. I had a life. I had a position. I had respect. And you. He jabbed a finger at my chest, around us. Other attendees were definitely watching now. Conversations dying down, hates turning. You couldn't handle the truth about your own wife, so you decided to burn everything down. The truth about my wife is that she spent 15 years lying to me while you helped her do it. That's not on me. She came to me. She wanted it. Everything that happened was consensual between adults. She was 19 years old, and you were her professor. You had a position of authority. That's not a relationship. That's predation. Don't lecture me about, and it wasn't just her, was it? The student in 2008, the colleague you's wife before that. You've made a career out of this, using your position to seduce women who trusted you. I kept my voice calm, conversational, loud enough for the growing audience to hear. Everything that's happened to you is a consequence of your own choices. Walk away. You don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to walk away. His face twisted. For a moment, I thought he might actually listen to reason. Then something behind his eyes snapped. He swung at me. I'd like to say I saw it coming, but I didn't. The punch caught me on the cheekbone, snapping my head to the side. I stumbled backward into the refreshment table, sending coffee cups scattering across the white tablecloth. Someone screamed. Someone else was shouting for security. Security was on him in seconds. Two large men in black polo shirts pinning his arms behind his back while he screamed obscenities at me. Someone was calling the police. Someone else was filming on their phone. I touched my cheek. My fingers came away with a smear of blood. His ring had caught me just below my eye. Press charges, the security chief at Firestein, once the police had arrived and taken Ashford into custody. This is a room full of witnesses. Half of them have video. He's done. I pressed charges. The video made the rounds in professional circles. Disgraced former professor attacks conference attendee. Wasn't exactly headline news, but in academia and consulting, reputation is everything. Ashford's last chance at rehabilitation evaporated overnight. The assault charge was minor probation and a fine, but the damage was done. His name became a cautionary tale. The PR consultant released a statement distancing himself from the whole situation. The few contacts Ashford had left suddenly stopped returning his calls. Last I heard, he was writing freelance articles for content mills, struggling to make rent on his studio apartment. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel anything at all. 1 year after I first heard Nathan Larson say the name Dr. Ashford, I was standing in my backyard watching my daughter attempt a cartwheel. The divorce was final. The house was mine. Lily was thriving, adjusting to the rhythm of two homes with the adaptability that children seem to possess naturally. She spent every other weekend with Tori, who had moved into a small apartment across town. Tori's career had stalled. The stress and distraction of the divorce proceedings had affected her work. She wasn't destroyed. That had never been my goal, but she was exactly where her choices had led her. Daddy, watch. I almost got it. I see. Keep trying, sweetheart. I fun bust. A text from Raymond. Heard Ashford's trying to write a book about cancel culture. Nobody will publish it. I smiled, put the phone away, and walked across the grass to where my daughter was gearing up for another attempt. Okay, she said. Face serious with concentration. This time I'm going to do it perfect. I believe in you. She cartwheeled a little wobbly, but she stuck the landing and turned to me with a grin that lit up her whole face. Did you see? Did you saw? That was amazing. I lifted her onto my shoulders and carried her inside for dinner. The house felt different now. Quieter, but not emptier. The ghosts of 15 years of lies had been exorcised. Caroline Ashford and I still had coffee occasionally, friendly, platonic. Two people who'd survived the same storm and found themselves on the same shore. Megan sent me a Christmas card that year. "Thank you," it said, "for not hating me for being the messenger." I wrote back, "I could never hate you. You told me the truth when no one else would." Tori tried to call me once about 8 months after the divorce was final. I let it go to voicemail. "Ethan, it's me. I know you probably don't to talk, but I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Not because I want anything. I know we're past that. I'm sorry for what I did to you, for what I took for all of it. You deserved better, you always did. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it and went back to my life. The truth was, I'd moved past Anchor a long time ago. What Tori had done was unforgivable, but forgiveness wasn't the same as obsession. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life thinking at a trail. I wanted to spend it building something new. And that's exactly what I did. Lily finished 3rd grade with honors. She joined a soccer team and turned out to be a pretty decent midfielder. She asked about getting a puppy approximately 300 more times, and eventually I caved, and we adopted a golden retriever mix she named Butterscotch. I started seeing someone, a woman I met through work, another engineer named Rachel, divorced with a son about Lily's age. We'd been introduced at a project meeting and found ourselves talking long after everyone else had left. She had a dry sense of humor and a nonsense approach to life that I found refreshing after years of navigating Tori's games. We took it slow. Neither of us was in a rush. We'd both learned the hard way that some things couldn't be unbroken once they were damaged. "You're different than I expected," she told me once early on. We were sitting on her porch watching the kids play in the backyard, drinking iced tea like an old married couple. "When I heard about happened with your ex-wife, I thought you'd be angrier. I was angry for a long time, but anger's exhausting, and I've got a daughter who needs me present, not poisoned by the past. That's remarkably healthy. I've worked at it. Therapy helps. Having a good attorney helped. Having friends who didn't let me wallow helped." I shrugged. "It didn't come naturally. I had to learn how to let go of things I couldn't change and focus on things I could." "Like what?" "Like being a good father. Like building a career I'm proud of. Like being honest with myself about what I want instead of accepting whatever someone else decided I deserved." She laughed, and I realized it was the first time in a long while that I'd heard that sound. Genuine laughter from someone who actually knew my story and felt something warm in response. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think you're doing pretty well. Getting there slowly." Maybe that was what healing felt like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something new growing in its place. The last time I thought about Graham Ashford was on Lily's 9th birthday. We were at a park surrounded by screaming children and sugar-hyped chaos. Tori was there. We'd agreed on joint parties for Lily's sake, hovering awkwardly at the edge of the crowd, looking smaller than I remembered. I thought about the photo booth strip, the timeline I'd constructed in those terrible early weeks, the phone calls and hotel rooms and 15 years of betrayal. And then Lily ran up to me, face smeared with frosting, and threw her arms around my waist. "Best birthday ever, Daddy. I'm glad, sweetheart." I picked her up and spun her around while she shrieked with laughter. And somewhere in that moment, the last of the anger let go. not forgiveness. I'd never forgive what Tori did. But something like acceptance, an understanding that the past was done, and the only thing left was what I chose to build next. I sat Lily down and watched her run back to her fence. The golden afternoon light was painting everything soft at the edges. Butterscotch was stealing hot dogs from unattended plates. My new girlfriend caught my eye from across the picnic area and smiled. Not the life I'd planned, but a good one. Anyway, later that night, after Lily was in bed and the house was quiet, I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard where I had once imagined growing old with Tori. A different future now, but not a worse one.